Zachy his son is your host on this most epic journey through pop culture's past. Hold on to your butts. This is Nostalgia Theater.
Brought to you by the Movie Film Podcast.
Welcome back to Nostalgia Theater, everybody. This is Zachy Hassan, and when I started out planning this show, I was going to look at not just TV shows and not just movies from sort of this mythical nostalgia era that I consider my nostalgic sweet spot, but also sort of multimedia phenomena. And I think in that list, very near the top for me, was the Garbage Pail Kids trading cards phenomenon, which was as beloved by children as it was hated by adults, which of course made it only more beloved by children. So really, when I set out to do this show, I was like, I'm going to do a Garbage Pail Kids episode. So it was fortuitous when I was able to get in touch with Joe Simko, who is currently an artist on the new series of Garbage Pail Kids trading cards. But in addition to that, he's a cartoonist who's well known for the Wacky Packages series for Topps. He also runs his own company, Wax Eye, with his wife, producing the Stupid Heroes and Serial Killers trading cards. That's cereal as in breakfast, by the way, so not like the Jeffrey Dahmer series. He also wrote and illustrated the children's book, The Sweet Rot, and is currently co-producing and co-directing 30 Years of Garbage, the Garbage Pail Kids story. Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Zachy. Appreciate it.
So, I want to dedicate this episode to like my teacher back in third grade or second grade who took my Garbage Pail Kids cards from me. I had Mean Gene. That's the one I remember. And I never did see that card again.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of teachers out there that probably have drawers and drawers of Garbage Pail Kids, more than the kids ever had.
And they've probably put them on eBay, and they're able to put an addition on their house with those early cards.
Yeah, right on.
So now I'm curious about this. Now you are, in addition to working on the current Garbage Pail Kids, I'm assuming you're a longtime fan.
Of course. I mean, child of the 80s, grew up in the 80s. I was about 10 years old when they came out, so it hit the chord. All the kids in school were collecting them. It was the perfect time, to be into that, and absolutely a fan. To be painting them now, it's one of those things I would never even have thought of. Growing up, going through high school, and taking college art classes, not even thinking of you're already. My brain is like already forgotten about Garbage Pail Kids at this point, and strange to be thinking that I'd be painting them now, and very cool.
So you were about 10 when the cards first came out, and we're talking this is like 1985.
That's it. Yep.
So having now you've gone into the archives, you've talked to the people. Where did this start? And I mean, obviously, it seems very apparent that this was a direct response to the overwhelming success of Cabbage Patch Kids.
Absolutely. Well, with doing the documentary, going back and finding all the original artists and creators who worked at Topps in the day, Mark Newgarden, Len Brown, Art Spiegelman, who've all gone on to do their, incredible works of art in their own right. Getting the stories from them of how it came about, which, at the time the Cabbage Patch Kids were huge, and Topps really wanted to get just simply the license to Cabbage Patch Kids and put out picture cards. As Topps does with, movie cards or television or entertainment, just capture what's hot and put out trading cards of that. Of course, the Cabbage Patch Company, I suppose Coleco perhaps owned it at the time. They just, they were too big already. It's like, no, they just passed. They're like, no, we don't need picture cards. We already have, stickers and T-shirts and all this other stuff, So learning about that they couldn't get the rights to do that, they're like, well, all right, we'll just make fun of them. Which was,
it's worth sorry, just real quick, it's worth pointing out here what a strange, bizarre phenomenon the Cabbage Patch Dolls were when they started, because there's, at least me being a little kid, I was like, I don't get it. They're just these regular dolls, but it was like they were like the Tickle Me Elmo before Tickle Me Elmo.
They were the mega huge. It was like we have shots from news footage of back in the day when parents were just like clamoring for these dolls. It was like a Black Friday sales that you see now at Walmart, but for one specific item, like the insane mob, but for one item. You know, with store vendors behind counters with baseball, like seriously, baseball bats screaming, "Get back, get back!" Cabbage Patch dolls flying everywhere, and it was such a huge craze. But what I think was so cool is that there were boys into it, but it was a girl thing mostly.
Yeah.
To me, it was like this crazy thing that was invading the boy world, the little kid boy world of toys, and the Garbage Pail Kids were like the answer to that. That was like the rebellion, right? That was like their little world, their demographic was like this Cabbage Patch thing dominating their world, and here came Garbage Pail Kids. That like completely was like the perfect antithesis to that. So I think that's a pretty fun concept that happened there.
So in Hollywood, they say success has many fathers, and with Garbage Pail Kids, was it the brainstorm of one person, or was it truly a collaboration that made it, what it became?
That's the debate. That's the that's the struggle with some of the original creators. Some claim ownership, some claim sole ownership, some claim collaborative ownership. I think we captured it pretty well in the documentary, so let's maybe the viewers can kind of decide themselves too. So in my eyes, it was collaborative. It had to. Yeah. I mean, even with the artists that they brought in, John Pound, the original artist that they hired to do these beautiful paintings, even though he's mimicking a style that's already out there, he still had to put his stamp on it, his unique, inspired, artistic mindset into these paintings. So, he could be considered a creator of it too. So not just the guys that said, let's do it.
Sure.
The artists as well.
Now the original run was for how many years? It started in 85 and it kind of petered out. Was it by like 1990?
It was 88, 1988. Okay. The specific month, and we have like a Garbage Pail Kid historian we interviewed, and there are people that they have it pinpointed down to like probably the day.
Wow.
But it was one of the months. I'm going to say like early to spring in 88. But then, hey, could have been fall or winter. But yeah, it basically went to 1988. Mm-hmm. And at least in the US. But it became such a phenomenon that across the world, the country, and we have this in our documentary, the incredible foreign releases of Garbage Pail Kids, we're producing them throughout the late 80s, early 90s, possibly even up into mid 90s. But the US saw nothing. It was basically forgotten. By the time the 90s hit, it was like, it's amazing. Little kids' fads, even something as huge and monstrous as that. To myself, as an artist, was so addicted to these things. I was like, yeah, after like just a few years, I'm like already on to the next thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of interesting in and of itself, because I can, I still have memories of that era, and I can attest to how quickly things would burn white hot and then just kind of burn out.
Right. No, absolutely.
So, I mean, we're talking about 3 years of, so it had within 3 years, it went from slow burn to explosion to just kind of petering out.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I specifically remember being in like camp or in school by the time I was hitting like 13, 14 years old, and you kind of got made fun of by your peers if you were still collecting Garbage Pail Kids. It was like, wow. You're still because they went up to they went up to 15 series of Garbage Pail Kids. Right. So they were hot in the second, third series, fourth series, great fit. All right, wait, you're holding a pack from like 15. What do you lose now? Now it's like really, it was kind of embarrassing, which I feel, it's like, why was I so ashamed back then? But now I'm very proud of it, of course. But yeah.
When the series, when the brand was first created, I'm assuming it didn't just explode right off the bat.
I think they did pretty well. From what I gather, there was like a test release in Pennsylvania But you know what? I think they did fairly well. I mean, they hit their peak probably by the second or third series, but they caught on right away. Garbage Pail Kids were an answer or like a callback to the wacky packages that Topps had released during the 90s, which was the parody. I mean, that's kind of like where they were getting, the idea to like, oh, it's easy to make fun of them because they did that already with wacky packages, spoofing household products. Instead of Crest toothpaste, they would have a sticker painted called Crust toothpaste, things like that. And that took a while. So it was almost like the first start was them testing that whole spoof parody card set. Not to dwell on the wacky packages thing, but that was kind of like they made them originally as like cardboard pop out things that you had to like just pop out of a cardboard.
Sure.
And they just didn't do well. And then like, oh, let's turn them into stickers. And then that's what became successful. So I think with that already as kind of a testing ground, Garbage Pail Kids took off like immediately, knowing let's just do them as stickers right off the bat. They knew how to do the packaging. Everything really worked out pretty well, as we can see.
So I mean, the brand, did it originate with Art Spiegelman? I mean, he's sort of credited as one of the key people. Did he dream it up, or was he given marching orders and he kind of ran with it?
Sure. Well, it was. See, that's the thing. We do tell a lot of the story where it was a combination of like all these elements really working out. Yes, he was working at Topps at the time. Mark Newgarden was extremely instrumental in the fact that he was brought into Topps in the 80s, where they decided to keep going with wacky packages. And
Sure.
Mark Newgarden was like, all right, I'll do a parody of the Cabbage Patch Kids, calling it The Garbage Pail Kid, which was a painted package, like traditional wacky packages style, where it's the box with the little doll inside, and it's called Garbage Pail Kid in the Cabbage Patch font with the leaves and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was his concept, but for whatever reason, they never published it. And so lo and behold, that was kind of like maybe a little seed, or a major seed actually, of, the CEO of Topps basically saying, if we can't get the license to Cabbage Patch Kids, then let's just, parody them. And then Art Spiegelman basically got that, took that original concept that Mark Newgarden had come up with for the wacky packages, and Art Spiegelman really riffed on that and came up with a lot of concepts. So it was kind of like without the two, and Art Spiegelman came up with the adjective name that describes the vice of the character, Boney Joni, instead of just all them names, because originally they would just do names of kids like Joni or Zachy or Joe or Fred or Bob. But, Art came up with like, no, let's, copy like, have them doing something gross, Boney Joni or Joe Blow. And then, with Len Brown kind of controlling, he was kind of like the art director. Len Brown, goes back to the Topps days. Like he was the co-creator of Mars Attacks cards, many things, all the crazy candy that they used to put out. He put his input a lot into it. And like I said, the artist that they hired, John Pound, I mean, he is an incredible fantasy, like hyper-realism fantasy artist, painter.
Right.
We show a lot of that in the documentary, his fantasy art, which is incredible. And then he just wanted to do humor because he was sick of doing very serious, dark, brooding fantasy art, which is beautiful. But he's like, I just want to do humor stuff. And he landed this. And with his stamp, I kind of look at it like that's the band, you got the, you can't have like the Beatles with one guy, they were like a four-headed monster, like any band or artist group collective. And it's funny because all these guys came from like the underground comics movement, as writers and artists. They just happened to work under this corporate, company of Topps. So, if it wasn't for like this corporation that, of course was able to like fund it, so in a way Topps was able to, put this out, but it did come from these like underground comics artists who created this massive pop cultural art movement that, in a weird way, I like to call it, it's like this, it was underground. It was like the most mainstream underground thing ever at the time because it got no press, no advertisement on TV, no print ads.
Yeah.
Just word of mouth through the schoolyards. So it was like
It,
underground but mainstream. So
it was an organic phenomenon in that, like you said, I mean, you heard about it from on the streets, so to speak.
yeah, absolutely. The streets, the schoolyards. Um, I mean, I think that's the most viral thing for anything in a day without any kind of social media, internet happening at the time. It's who's going to be all your contacts around at that time? The kids in school, your friends. So
So how many cards were in the first series?
I believe it's 40. So basically, they did two up. So there's 44 paintings,
Mhm.
and they did two names. So it'd be like an A and a B card. So you have Boney Joni, and
Mhm.
then the exact same painting, but she'd be called Thin Lin, and that'd be like
Oh,
the B version. So really, kids would be collecting 88 cards instead of 44. They'd have to get the entire set, 88, but there's 44 different designs.
gotcha. And was that for each series was about that many?
Yeah, pretty much. Until we're starting to get. I mean, we won't get ahead of ourselves, but like the paintings we're doing now at Tops, I mean, we go up into the hundreds, and it gets crazy with bonus cards and hidden redemption stuff. So
Wow.
printing plates and stuff like that. So, but yeah, traditionally all the way up in the original 80s, 1985 to 88, it was basically about that number, 40 mid 40s, equaling about 80 something cards for each series.
And again, and that's through like 15 series.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. So John Pound, just going through all these, he was basically doing a painting a day, and Topps decided, well, we got to bring somebody else to keep John from burning out. Brought an awesome underground comics cartoonist, and he's working for Mad Magazine now. Tom Bunk. Um, he did a lot of the iconic characters that you see. Eerie Eric, who's like this little werewolf dude. Large Marge. He came in, and then they brought in James Warhola. We interviewed him. He is the nephew of Andy Warhol.
Oh wow.
Huge pop artist. So it's great because we hear his thoughts on what Andy Warhol thought of Garbage Pail Kids. So we'll save that for the documentary, but it's pretty neat. So yeah, these artists really were working a lot. They were putting out about 4 to 5 series a year at some point, as opposed to what we're doing with the artists currently, like myself, we're doing like 1 to 2 series a year.
Okay. Oh wow.
And there's more of us. There's
Right.
like 5 to 6 artists.
Well, okay, so you mentioned how, it was this organic phenomenon as far as how kids glommed onto it. Now, going right hand in hand in that, was the controversy.
Sure.
At what point does the controversy flare up?
It comes in fairly early, around the 3rd to 4th series. Well, the controversy basically like just parents and educators and psychologists, psychiatrists all condemning it, and was pretty early on, 2nd or 3rd series. But as far as we're getting into like lawsuit times, it's probably the 2nd year into it. So they're already into the 3rd or 4th series as well. But there was like a deal that got worked out where a settlement was made. So, you have the Cabbage Patch Company, Original Appalachian Artworks, which was run by the creator of Cabbage Patch Kids, Xavier Roberts, suing Topps for infringement. All the details of this stuff is also in the documentary, just numbers.
Sure.
Might be, but so basically they made a settlement, which is that there was still a little payout, but Topps had to basically change the look of the Garbage Pail Kid characters. So they couldn't look like soft plush dolls anymore, like stuffing ripped out of them. They had to have hard plastic cracks on them. They had to have hinges on the joints, on the arms and legs. The eyes had to be really a little bit bigger. So, and it's by the 10th series, you can see the difference between the 9th series looking like the old cloth Cabbage Patch dolls. And then if you look at any 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th series from the 80s, they're like these weird looking hard plastic dolls. I mean, they try to make it look as close as possible, but there was, the difference in art style. So they look a little funky in the later
Right.
series. A few other changes. They had to change the logo from the curved banner to a straight banner that goes across. Subtle changes, but as James Warhola says, he's like, he didn't like that. He didn't like to put in cracks and joints in the characters, and he felt the changes were subtle enough, but subtle enough to kill the whole concept.
Wow.
It could have been that, but sales were dwindling, and by the time they got to the 15th series, they had actually already painted a complete 16th series, but never published it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they just stopped at number 15.
Well, it's a good round number.
Yeah, right? 555. Yeah, exactly.
Now, in terms of not just the lawsuit from the Cabbage Patch people, which I think it was Coleco at that time, but in addition to that, you alluded to the psychologists and the parent groups and whatnot getting upset. What was the process by which they what was the quality control to not get too gross or too far out there, or was there any?
Right. Well, that's, exactly. It's like, wow, they really pushed the envelope on a lot of these things. But believe it or not, there was even cards that got unpublished. And we show those unpublished cards in the documentary. And some, super fans and Uber collectors, they've seen these. Some of these are out there, but some of them aren't. And it's fascinating. Some just handicapped children in really bad positions, theological disparagements, religious type stuff, heavy suicide even though they did touch on suicide a lot, which is pretty crazy. We're able to, other ones, stuff with guns and stuff, and they had guns, which is crazy because now we do live in an age where it's just so forbidden that us current artists, we can't paint guns on our Garbage Pail Kids. But back then they had characters with guns, but physically having the character like pointing a gun to his head and shooting his brains out, they actually had painted some of those things went unpublished. So I think they knew there was a line. They still try to push it as far as they could, and I'm sure I don't know. They would have gotten really hit even heavier with some massive lawsuits outside of just Cabbage Patch infringement if they went with some of these really dark cards.
Super dark. Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things where certainly as a kid, I know that if I was forbidden to be a fan of something, that made me want to be a fan more.
Oh yeah, of course, right? That's the case. Absolutely. We interviewed, so we wound up getting people who are now in their 30s, 40s, who were the children of the 80s. Everything from just your basic average fan to people who've gone on to become horror film specialists, working at Fangoria, to Adam Goldberg, who's producer of the Goldbergs series on ABC.
Wow.
He's a contributor to our documentary. And so, a lot of these people, and myself included, had parents that didn't mind us collecting these things,
Right.
You think every parent would be against it, and there were, but there were a lot of kids whose parents were like, it's okay, it's fine, we know it's not hurting you. And a lot of these some psychiatrists even said, their kids are just like, these are interviews from the 80s with psychiatrists, like really current at the time, saying, kids are just identifying with these things, and it's harmless activity. So there were, along with the people against it, there were parental organizations that were like saying it's fine. What really came down, I think, with the banning in the schools from principals was not so much the gross out nature, was they were just clear distractions in class. Kids were just talking to each other, trading them in the middle of class, and that's why they were getting confiscated more than the gross out factor, which is the more enticing, juicier story, but they were just heavy distractions.
Sure. It's like, it's almost quaint, right? When we're talking about this, it's almost quaint to be like, oh, remember the days when like trading cards would distract kids as opposed to the stuff that's taking up their mind space now.
Yeah. Cell phone or apps and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly.
It really is. It's a benchmark of just a simpler era.
I think so. And we talk about how, like, if trading cards even have a point or value in today's society. I mean, I run that company Wax Eye with my wife, and we do well with our parodies of the serial killers, which is the spoof of breakfast cereals and monsters, and we have stupid heroes. And we talked to Len Brown, who, again, the originator of Mars Attacks and worked on the Garbage Pail Kid sets. He sees that trading cards will always have a place because kids want whatever is the hottest thing. The Marvel movies out now, Doctor Strange coming out, Avengers. There's still going to be picture cards, trading cards. The kids just want to have that, to own it, to hold it, to trade it. It is still a kind of a bonding experience between kids and their friends. So have that tactile touch, besides just like a digital world out there, is it's still there for the time being.
Well, and that's what's really interesting, because I mean, there are these like apps that you download and you can digitally trade cards, and
Right.
and I'm like, I don't understand that, and I feel like just this geezer because I'm like, that makes no sense.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, well, the way we handle it is we do have an app ourselves, Serial Boom we call it, and it's more, we turn it into more of a video game of our trading cards.
See, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and it works as an advertisement. I mean, you can collect the cards when you win a certain level, but it's also an advertisement to get the cards. It's like an ad to buying the cards. Having them as stickers helps, because people,
Oh, sure.
just peel them and get in trouble by sticking them on refrigerators and cars.
Now, in the middle of the original Garbage Pail Kids run, of course, we expanded far beyond the trading cards, as these things do. Now, I'm actually surprised there weren't like action figures or anything like that. Was that ever on the agenda, or was there a legal thing that they couldn't do that?
Well, no, there was, but they got around it with they did something called cheap toys, which are these super micro tiny little rubbery figures of about, see, again, I'm not the cheap toy expert, and there are ones that are out there of a certain amount of figures, of characters. And they're just like single solid color, like all green, or
Okay.
all red, or all pink, or all blue.
So they're like army men or something, like in terms of that.
Yeah, but like rubbery, and they sold them in little garbage bags, which is a cool concept. But they called it cheap toys because they didn't want to getting into the lawsuit thing. They couldn't put out toys because then the toys would wind up looking like Cabbage Patch Kids. And if they put out toys, they couldn't call them Garbage Pail Kids. Would have to call it like Garbage Pail Gang, or in this case, Cheap Toys, which was like a little plastic garbage can. It came with candy, garbage candy, and stuff like that. So yeah, that had a life in the 80s. They licensed out a lot of product. Bop bags, those giant inflatable punching bags that kids could knock over and bop back up. Yo-yos, sunglasses, bouncy balls, just all this crazy stuff that I must have missed out on, but apparently Toys R Us was a big seller of them, and they would just have a wall of all these Garbage Pail Kid licensed products in the 80s. And you can go on eBay now and find them, and some of them are priced pretty high, some of them are fairly reasonable, but they're in the couple $100 ranges. For collectors, that's nothing.
Wow.
To get. So as far as that's concerned, yeah, they could never really do a full-on doll or product like that. If you want to jump cut to now, 2014, we see Funko has been able to get the license and came up with some really incredible sculpts of a good batch of characters, giant 10-inch atom bomb, vinyl. It's really nice. Comic books. What else? They've produced some pretty cool stuff so far. But yeah, back in the day, there was a whole licensing scheme, and then the cartoon.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Now the cartoon show was heavily hyped, but ultimately didn't air in the United States.
Yeah, such a bummer. I remember checking the TV guide, and there it was listed in my Pennsylvania local listings. The TV guide. It wasn't the official TV guide, but
The free one that came in the newspaper. Or whatever.
Yeah. And for like 3 weeks, there it was like Garbage Pail Kids, 10 o'clock, CBS, and it'd be like an extra hour of Muppet Babies instead. And I'd just be like, what's going on? And there's nowhere to go on the internet and find research on this, and other friends, they don't know. And so again, it's one of those things where I'm disgruntled 11 or 12-year-old kid at the time. And then I forget about it and move on. Then I'm into Mad Magazine and other stuff. But a DVD was released like a few years back of the whole entire like 13 episodes, I suppose, that never aired.
Yeah.
In the U.S., it did actually air at the time in other countries like Philippines and some European countries, believe it or not, Spain, I believe. But anyway, so yeah, this DVD comes out a few years back, and I watch it, and it's interesting. It's cool in a way to actually see the Garbage Pail Kids in animation form, but at the same time, it's like you want more of them. Like, why are they only having like a whole like 10-minute story with like no Garbage Pail Kids in it, just like regular weird looking kids,
right?
Make up their own, but then there'd be another short story where they would have a classic character from a card. So it's kind of neat. So, but and we touch on that in the documentary as well. So, some fascinating stuff from that too.
I mean, I find that I didn't know about the Garbage Pail Kids cartoon at all until, like you said, until a couple of years ago when they released the cartoon. They're like, oh, the cartoon is coming out. I'm like, wait, there was a cartoon? And then, I went back and did some digging. And I was like, how is this like this blind spot in my pop culture recall that I didn't know about the existence of this show? But and it was developed by Flint Dille, who he wrote like the Transformers movie and the Transformers the animated movie, I should say, and he's heavily involved in G.I. Joe, I think. But I think the problem, at least from what I see, and I've only seen just a handful of these episodes, is it's I don't know that it's a world that really lends itself to a universe.
Right. Well, I think what they were trying to do, and part of the concepts were good. I mean, split it into like 3 different kind of segments where there's like a Scooby-Doo-esque type thing where there's like one storyline would have what do they have, like six main characters, and so you would follow them around. Then there would be another storyline, that would be like out of a half hour, that would be one 15-minute story. Then the next 15-minute story would be like a parody of a film, a famous movie, which is great because then you can turn that into Garbage Pail Kids. And then they had this segments where they'd be like these little in-between, like, 30-second little gag joke things in between the stories, which concept-wise was, I think, worked really well. But, there's always something about it that just quite didn't work. But I think it's neat that they attempted it. And it's a lot more fun to watch than the movie.
Well, and we'll get to that in just a second. Now the cartoon show, basically CBS caved to... I want to say it's like Peggy Charon's group that was just all over kids programming during that time.
Yeah, the AFA, the American Family Association. So
that's right.
Yeah, they got petitions, and I mean they just got tons and tons of signatures and people donating money to for postcards, and just flooded CBS studios with just constant postcards of like, do not do this, like, just all these threats, not, too damaging, but, enough to the point where it actually caused CBS. And this is a cool little fun fact. At that time, I don't know about now, but at that time, it was the first show to ever be canceled due to a public protest. Not canceled like, the CEO, the network doesn't like, it's like due to a public protest to never be aired. So that's pretty neat.
Well, I mean, it certainly gives the show, it makes it a little more metal.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but I mean, these protests happened without these groups having seen an episode.
Oh no, they just based it on the cards, of course, and in their written statements about it, they would just say the cards are telling kids that it's okay to make fun of other children, make fun of children with physical handicaps, literally one line is like, "It's okay to call children retards." It's like pretty. I mean, this is their saying it. It's like, what? When did we ever say that? When did garbage
Yeah.
ever say that? Uh, we have some insane quotes from a lot of people. It's just I'll wait for the doc for that for people to read it because it's laugh out loud funny.
It's really like when you think about it. I mean, the last thing that these cards were doing was saying, "Hey, let's poke fun at people with disabilities." Like the walk to get from a Garbage Pail Kid card with like a kid unzipping his skin and there's like his skeleton to, "Hey, let's make fun of people with disabilities." I mean, you really like you have to do some
Right.
you have to do some walking to get there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if anything, it probably goes back to like what I was saying, the psychiatrist from the 80s, just basically saying, well, some of these kids, they identify with it. They're like, they're outcasts or misfits and that's what these Garbage Pail Kids are. And so they connect more with it. So as opposed to being like, sad if I saw my name,
Right.
it's like, oh, so.
I would think that if you were now my name's Zachy, so I didn't get to see my name in many, I don't get to buy my name on like a license plate, but I missed out. But I'm thinking that if your name is Adam and you see Adam Bomb, that's like, hey, I've made it. You know what I mean?
Well, you're Adam. You made the number one. You made the box, the wrapper, all the product placement, advertising. Yes. No, that was what made it so collectible for kids. I mean, it was the combination of it hit so many things. Not only was it like this attack on the invasion of Cabbage Patch Kids, to the boy world, but to have your name on there, I mean, that was so much more of a collectible, item to have. So, yeah.
It was your Garbage Pail Kid.
Yes. Yeah.
So I mean, in a sense, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think cancel the cartoon show getting pulled, while it was no doubt traumatic for kids who were waiting for it. I think that was probably the best thing that could have happened, because I can see how a show like that being on, and assuming it had a life longer than 13 episodes, I could easily see it leading to kind of the homogenization of the brand itself.
Right. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah. Like anything. Yeah. It just becomes this stale thing that's on. It's out there in the world and everybody knows about. I mean, everyone knew about it at the time, but yeah, where it doesn't have that kind of that niche factor that it took till now to actually get. To actually really go to the underground again. So.
Well, and so I mean, that's like a perfect place to segue to the film, which, unlike the cartoon, the live action movie did come out.
Yeah.
And I think many fans would agree. We wish that had gotten pulled too before.
Yeah, in it we got to interview a lot of the actors in that movie. Mackenzie Astin, the lead role, a few of the little people who played some of the Garbage Pail Kids. And they're honest about it. It's just great.
I mean, the Garbage Pail Kids movie is really it. When I say you gotta watch it, I mean it, because there's nothing I can say to sum up this, just the existence of this thing.
It's funny because Adam Goldberg, who I mentioned we interviewed in the documentary, and he's a producer now, and he writes family film. He's done stuff. He's done some DreamWorks stuff, and he's like, the thing about that 80s movie, it fascinated him so much because only in the 80s were these weird movies, and I'm quoting him, Adam Goldberg, saying like Mac and Me. I don't know if you remember that. Sure. And, things like these weird like family films that like they're so off the charts and bizarre, like it could only have been made at that time.
Sure.
And Garbage Pail Kids was one of them. There's this like weird adult content at the end where the Garbage Pail Kids are in a fashion show and they're ripping the clothes off the models and they're running around in their bikini underwear. And so, and it got labeled as like the second worst movie ever made. First being Ed Wood, but to put that label, it's still watchable. It's a weird thing because yes, it's horrible, but it's watchable in the fact that. You can't look away, probably.
Yeah.
And the director, he was doing it to fulfill a contract, so he wasn't really into it. And what was they filmed it in like 6 weeks, the whole thing from like the beginning of like, oh, we're gonna do a movie, not like, oh, we're starting shooting, but like we're gonna do a movie called The Garbage Truck, to the ending was 6 weeks. That's how fast it was. And so,
well, it certainly shows.
yeah. And but it was great getting the interviews with some of the guys that worked on that.
I'm sure.
And just hearing their stories about it.
What's fascinating about the movie to me is exactly what you said, how quickly they saw the trend and they jumped on it and they got the product out there. Because when you think about it, like for example, 1987, same year, the Masters of the Universe movie came out.
There's another one, yeah.
Right, and obviously that has, that's probably held in the same level of fascinating contempt, whatever, as the Garbage Pail Kids. But I mean, when the He-Man movie came out, that was like 5 years after the toy line debuted, after the cartoon. The bloom was very much off the rose by then.
Yeah, it's a hard thing. It's like you gotta really jump on it when it's hot. My whole thing was like capturing property, and this you can relate to any property series that's being made into films now that are getting like the Gem movie that came out.
Oh, perfect example. Yeah.
Just make the characters look like the cartoon. Transformers, the big one, the big divisive, Transformers films that came out with Michael Bay.
Yeah.
I get it. I get, there's a new generation wants to make, put their own spin on it, make it look like it. To me, though, it's missed the mark unless you make the character look like the licensed property and show them a lot. So the Garbage Pail Kids, I would just, have them. But then again, at the same time, that was the hard thing. Topps already had the lawsuit. They couldn't make these characters in the movie look like Cabbage Patch Kids. So it's like, how are these sculptors, going to deal with this? So they had to kind of make them look like dolls, but it was a tricky situation. So you can see their dilemma. John Buechler is an awesome makeup artist, effects artist from the 80s. He did the work on that, and he's directed some great like films on his own right. It's just like, you can have the best master, and it's like you're stuck in a position where you got to make this movie, but they can't look anything like the cards.
Yeah.
So
well now regardless of quality, there was an enormous fan base for the property. So why didn't they turn out for the movie? I mean, do kids pay attention to reviews? I mean, I don't think so.
No, I think it also had to do a lot of parents at that point. Yeah, it was also parents. To be honest, I didn't even know. I don't think it got much advertising. It was one of those things I must have just missed or didn't catch any commercials, running on television. I missed it. I didn't discover it until it was out in the video store like the next year or two later. So that could have been one reason kids weren't hitting it. Maybe parents were just like, it's not worth it. That's a question that I'm still wondering myself. So.
And by the way, the Garbage Pail Kids movie actually came out like 2 weeks after the Masters of the Universe movie. So maybe all the kids were watching He-Man. That's actually
or they saw like they didn't do He-Man right. What makes because they is Hollywood. Everyone is doing the same. They're all together. They're all one.
You picture these like 7-8-year-olds like, forget it. Hollywood doesn't care about the real fans.
Absolutely.
So the film dies, but that's not the reason that the cards sort of started to peter out, even though this is kind of right in the movie and the cartoon were both right in the middle of this like 4-year run.
Yeah, true. Yeah. It was like 87, the film. So yeah, cards were still going on in 88. But like I said, by then I think we were hitting up to the 10th series, and that became the post-lawsuit designs of the characters. So they were already starting to look a little weird. And they were bringing in some other artists besides the 3 core guys, John Pound, Tom Bunk, and James Mahola. And not to disparage, but it just designs. Some of these were really looking like, I don't even know if they were cartoonists.
Wow.
They were artists, but it could have been like fine artists. or
Right.
beautiful landscape painters, and who knows. It's definitely leaked over into a little bit when they brought them back in the early 2000s. Some of that, clunking of the beginning starts of the all new series of Garbage Pail Kids had a little rough start, but so yeah, I think it was dwindling. Its time has run out. It could have been a combination like the little kid fad thing, which for 3 years is actually a long time considering now. I mean, there's studies on this too. It's like they get shorter and shorter as each, Pokemon, which was probably a couple years, and I know kids are still into that, but that had even less of a lifespan as far as its peak.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, when I look at the late 80s, when I sort of picture the decade in my mind, and specifically when I look at 88, I see, the Ninja Turtles were like the thing that just stopped everything else in its tracks.
There you go. Yeah. Ninja Turtles took over. Saturday morning cartoons were still a big thing. I mean, they were, still going strong, and it was just probably a lot of that stuff. The action, superhero stuff,
right,
really became popular.
So Garbage Pail Kids basically went away, and as you said, by 1990, I mean, they were essentially forgotten by, by the prime demographic. But they never truly went away, and they've kept coming back.
Right. So, I mean, like I said, they were still going on in other places around the world. They would, Russia would license it in like 2000 or something, 1999, and so many different places across the world. But as far as the U.S., they kind of went into this underground world, and I didn't start really discovering them again. Like, it really left my brain. I'm like, I didn't even think about them because I was just focused on college and, trying to get into comics or underground comics, doing my own stories and stuff like that. And then a buddy of mine, an art school friend of mine, he was buying them on eBay.
Okay.
eBay was just beginning. Like, we're in the late 90s here. And he's like, yeah, you can get those Garbage Pail Kid boxes, a complete box on eBay for like, $30, like 4th series or 5th series. And I was like, oh yeah. So I was like, this is great. So I've been buying them, but then we noticed like first series was like, $1,000, $2,000 for a complete box. Now they're up to $3,000 to $5,000.
Good Lord.
They're going up. Yeah. Just for the first series. But, and you can still buy some of these boxes on eBay, all of them. So that's kind of like myself getting back into them, just buying them, and just remembering them, the nostalgia for it. I guess when Tops came about, Jeff Zapata was the art director and editor at the time there. He's no longer with them, but he's a great friend of mine, and he's actually the co-producer and co-director on this documentary we're doing.
Oh, great.
He was the bridge to basically getting all these interviews. But he brought me in to him and Ira Friedman, who was running that the entertainment division there at Tops, to work on their new Garbage Pail Kids line. But they had started in 2003. I didn't come in until 2000, like late 2008 or 2009.
Sure.
So, but yeah, that was their way to kind of try to bring Garbage Pail Kids back. In 2003, they launched in select places like Dillon's Candy Store. They did not hit like they were back in the day, like in every gas station, 7-Eleven, Five and Dime or a card shop across the country. It was small releases at first, and grew from there.
So we're at a point now where the cards have been back for how long?
Well, let's see, for 2003, 13, 14, 15, 16, 10, 11, 12, 13 years now.
Wow. So far outlasting the original run.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. And they've had various incarnations, like they would call it all new series. In 2003, all new, like starting all over, all new series 1. And they go all the way up to all new series 7. I came in when they decided to call it the flashback series, where we got to paint the original characters as a where are they now type situation. Like,
interesting.
Yeah, so it's like a new gag. So I would take like Nat Nerd, the the pudgy little comic book kid with the glasses and zits all over his face, and he's like a CEO of like a Microsoft, stuff like that, So or Split Kit, who was a kid who was he was half a nice little kid, and on the other half he was like a hoodlum with like a knife and a gun. I drew him like he's in jail. Half of him is in jail. Half of him is in jail. The other half that's out of jail, he's dressed as a cop. So things like that. So, which was cool because that was like me coming back. I got to right away paint the classic characters. And it was hard at first because I'm like trying to emulate the style of the original guys, and I'm just doing my own thing. And, and there was already a huge Garbage Pail Kid fan base, forums out there and websites. And I was like, whoa, these guys are hard. They're critical. You got to get the right amount of fingers, the dimples in the right spot. And so I just kept practicing and practicing, and I stayed on board. Topps kept me on board, and through the flashback series, they changed it to brand new series, and then they changed brand new series to just a yearly series. So it would be like 2014 series 1, 2014 series 2. Now we're into 2016, and they're giving it a whole new name, calling it American as Apple Pie in Your Face series. Huh. Pretty long, but so that is actually coming out tomorrow. So it's another, there you go. Another worlds colliding there. So.
And talk about the documentary now. Now the documentary is not affiliated with Topps. It's not a quote unquote official thing. So it's a pure expression of your fandom as somebody who grew up with this.
Yeah, I mean, it probably wouldn't even have come about if I hadn't been painting these Garbage Pail Kids for a while now myself, or the fact that Jeff, who brought me in to the fold at Topps when he was the art director there, had left Topps, so he's kind of like his own man now, and he had the contacts available. We had a solid team that could film, could fly out with us and film the interviews for the original artists and creators. We set up an Indiegogo campaign, got a lot of great backing and pledgers to help fund it. So yeah, I mean, that's, of course being a fan, but gosh, now to meet the original artists and creators and know that there's so much more behind the story of just like, something that seems so surface and superficial, which is fine. Right. But as an artist myself, I love to know that there was something going on when the creators were thinking about this, that they were trying to create something very transversive and something that was very counterculture, and it worked. So, and like I said, to me, it's like an underground cartoonist going mainstream, yet keeping his cred and not selling out in a weird way. It's like the strangest thing, like an underground art phenomenon that everybody knew at the time. Like the parents knew, the kids knew, yet it lost no cred of selling out. So at least at that time.
Sure.
It's up to people's debate whether they think, Garbage Pail Kids are played out now or not. I think they're good. I think they have their place. I think, a couple vinyl sculpts that Funko did are great here and there. I think they're still in a good place. There's definitely not mainstream.
I think, one thing I always say is oftentimes the difference between high culture and low culture is sometimes longevity. And the longer something is part of the landscape, the more we embrace it, because SNL was this subversive thing when it started, but now it's considered, it's an institution.
Absolutely, there you go. Right, perfect word for it. Absolutely.
And I think that's the Garbage Pail Kids too at this point.
Well, and it's amazing because it's funny when you have to, like in the documentary, we talked to an appraiser and pop culture specialist who appraises things for high-end galleries, and he puts the worth on some of these cards and original artwork, and we're hitting thousands and thousands, mega thousands for the original Atom Bomb, and we give prices, so that'll be in the doc too. And I think that is really a good thing to show when we're just trying to have like the common person, the aunt or the uncle who has really no interest in snot-nosed pictures of cards. They're like, oh, they're worth money. Now I understand why they're important. Not that that's the reason why something's important, but it's like, there is more, like, these the atom bomb is considered like it's considered the Mona Lisa of pop culture art. So it is high end money there, and it's a weird spot because unlike baseball cards, where we have these valuable baseball cards from the 30s, Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra and all that, but Garbage Pail Kids, the cards are valuable, but they have artwork behind it too that's valuable. The original paintings, the pencils, the pencil sketches and all that stuff, color roughs. So there's collectors, there's high-end collectors that buy up all that stuff. There's collectors for each and every category you could think of. People that just collect the cards, that just collect the toys, that just collect original artwork, that collect custom artwork. They personally hire myself and a couple of these other new guys, Brent Engstrom, Mark Pingator, Leiron DeJarnette, Dave Gross. These are some of the new guys that work on the Garbage Pail Kid sets. And we get hired by these collectors to paint themselves as Garbage Pail Kids or their family, or weird mashups of movies that, is incredible because we touch on that in a documentary. And from talking to like these 20 and 30-year-olds who have no concept of what Garbage Pail Kids are or what the movie's about, that topic interests them the most. So we're like, oh, okay, that's, the fact that we're mashing up, Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but they're all Garbage Pail Kids. Or
right.
I do a painting of I do a time travel painting of Bill and Ted mixed with Terminator, mixed with Back to the Future, mixed with Doctor Who, but they're all Garbage Pail Kids in this one scene. That struck a chord with some like I said, the crowd who missed the boat, were born too late, and have no idea what GPK even is. That interests them the most. So it's like, I think we're going to hit a spot for every demographic. We interview the old people in this movie, middle-aged, and little kids, like 4-year-old to 10-year-old kids who just know the new Garbage Pail Kids.
Hopefully those of you who are listening to this will have your interest piqued. Certainly, for me, that just having this conversation was a fascinating excursion because a lot of this history I just don't know. So I think to be able to peek behind the curtain of something that we do, certainly at the time it was thought of as, even if it was thought of as subversive, I don't think it was thought of as being something that would be long-lived. And so the fact that here we are 31 years later now, and we have a documentary coming out about the Garbage Pail Kids, that certainly speaks to how much of a pop culture mark they did make.
Absolutely. We love it. It's looking great. We're really excited and can't wait for people to see this.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. And I want to make sure that our audience has a way to reach out to you. Do you have a web presence where people can contact you?
I'm at joesimko.com. That's just my website. Email me through there. My contact's on that page. Facebook, I'm searchable on there. Joe Simko. Twitter, Joe Simko.
So wherever you're searching for Joe, if you Google him, it should come right up probably.
Yeah. And 30 Years of Garbage. We got the Facebook page. We just started a new Twitter account, a fresh one. So we're just launching that all stuff. We're going to be hitting the Instagram and 30yearsofgarbage.com.
And Joe, thank you so much for talking to us. Hopefully you'll come back and join us again and delve into some other piece of nostalgia theater that you're a fan of, and we can reminisce together.
Oh, I would love it. Thank you, Zachy. I appreciate it. Absolutely.
And again, thank you for coming on, and thank you everybody for listening. Now, if you have any feedback for me, certainly if you have feedback for my guests that you'd like me to pass on, email me at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast. Also, I'm at the Huffington Post, where my movie reviews go up regularly, as does this show, as does the Movie Film Show. And you can find me at my website. That's ZakisCorner.com, ZAKIS Corner. That's also my Twitter handle and my Instagram handle. So please let me know what you think of the show. Go to iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you find podcasts, hit subscribe, leave a review, and let me know how I'm doing. And thanks for listening to the Nostalgia Theater Show.